thanks for tuning into Power Athlete Radio, featuring The Crew, where a former pro football player and a D3 All-Star use strength and conditioning as an excuse to talk about anything but. Now here's John and Tex.
Action. Hey, Power Athlete Nation. Welcome to another episode of the premier podcast of strength and conditioning, Power Athlete Radio. Mr. McQuilkin, great to see you.
Great to see you, John. Happy to be here.
Damn glad to meet you. Damn glad to be here. Well, you know what? It's another episode of Power Athlete Radio, and this one we are using questions from the hotline. Mm-hmm. But before we do, we had an interesting outing last week. We got a chance to go in and hang out with the guys from Drinkin' Bros and see how they produce and how they put on their podcast. And I have to say, I was impressed.
Very much so. Based in Austin now. They used to be San Antonio, and you were a guest on their show
3 or 4 years ago. When I first moved down here. Yeah, they were actually associated with Black Rifle and had a studio in Black Rifle down in San Antonio. Now they've moved up to Austin, and we got a chance to go over there and sit in on their studio, see how they were filming it, setting it up, and more importantly, how they were producing it. And their stuff was next level. They also are a major podcast. I mean, they just had Neil deGrasse Tyson on there.
Matthew McConaughey. So pretty interesting to see what other podcasts are doing, and more importantly, how they're monetizing it and how they're kind of pushing it. We're not necessarily looking to monetize. We're more about influencing individuals and providing our perspectives to hopefully be a voice of reason in a time of extreme turmoil. And there's a lot of range and mission to the podcast. Part of it, and why I love it, is the expansion of the genealogy. We get to meet some very switched on folks, see what they have to say about performance training, nutrition, recovery, all things related to athleticism. And we get the opportunity to see how it fits into the Power Athlete methodology.
Even though we are the premier podcast in strength conditioning.
Sorry. I thought we dropped that.
We did drop it. I was just waiting for you. Even though we are in that fitness class, I like to think we are as much a education and lifestyle, and just really pretty fascinating, and like the array of guests that we've brought on. I mean, we've had, some, like we had Stephen Collar on. It was funny as we were talking with those guys. They're like, hey, we're getting Stephen Collar on next week. We're like, I already had him. Did you have Angela Duckworth? No, you didn't have her either. What about Matt Lalonde? Didn't have him. What about Rob Wolf? So, I mean, we've had some pretty high-end individuals, and it's cool to see how they're producing it, and some of the changes that we're going to make here in the podcast room to just make it a little more visually appealing. So that's my project this week. But before we start hacking this whole room up and changing the feel, adding some different camera angles, and just upping our production, we got to answer some questions from the hotline. And you know what? They're always hot on the hotline. And if you are interested in leaving us a question and having us potentially answer it here on the air, you can call in to 929-464-464. 929-ING-0.
All right, here we go. Training related question. And I'm looking forward to this because it's bringing up some old school training.
Zach Evanesh. I feel like I should pour like a little bit out of my 40 malt liquor for my homeboy, Zach Evanesh, and old school.
Every time, he's great. But pulling in from our old school seminar that we used to empower coaches with some different training techniques. All right, here we go.
Hey guys, this is Andrew from Iowa. Been an avid follower of Power Athlete for many years now. First time calling into the hotline. And given the recent weather experience in Texas and all over the Midwest, I was spending some time spending many hours shoveling recently. And I was wondering, what would household labor like shoveling or doing any type of work similar be considered? Would this be more trunk work we might see at the beginning or end of a workout? Or would this be more field work we might see in one of the flagship programs like Field Strong? Just kind of wanting your 2 cents on this. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Man, that's pretty good, because I remember when I lived in Philadelphia and also in Kansas City, whenever there was like a big snow, they'd always put out this warning message. Hey, be careful when you go out and you start shoveling snow. And then they'd always provide us with some statistics that like men over the age of 40 like heart attacks go up exponentially.
Oh, wow.
Because, maybe guys been working too much, not training, not necessarily staying in shape. And then they go out there and they start shoveling snow. And as you know, that's kind of a dig, transverse plane throw, which would be trunk work combination and field work, because obviously hands in there. You're in this climate. And then next thing you know, they're stripping down because they're sweating and they're out there just digging snow. And then men would go in and have heart attacks. So heart attack numbers would go through the roof when there was a big snow because, guys weren't fit enough and then they got to go out and shovel snow.
Well, I believe it, especially in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah. I mean, heart attacks are common, especially when you have a diet of cheesesteak wings and Nick's roast beef.
And you're just angry all the time.
You're just drinking Yinglings like water. God damn. God bless them.
I love Yingling. My relationship with snow, I didn't see snow until I got to college. And playing a spring sport, we would have random snowstorms in DC, March, April, February, but we were tasked. Our athletic director was too damn cheap to get anybody to like take care of the fields, our turf, because they didn't want to ruin it. So no tractors, no nothing to get the field. So we, the men's lacrosse team, had to shovel the whole field for practice. So shovel 2 hours, practice 2 hours. And then the women's team would come on and just practice and no shoveling for them.
Well, as you should. I mean, that's what a gentleman does. And even though chivalry is dead in 2021, I like to believe it still exists here in Power Athlete.
Quick antidote that I have. With the shoveling of the snow, one year we were upset about it. So we shoveled it shoveled all the snow into one pile. And then at midnight, ran down to the field and formed it into a giant, what we called a glenis. So a giant dick, just prophylactic, right outside the girls' dorm.
That's genius.
Oh, yeah. I'll include the picture into the show notes. So click through on your links. But that was a fun one. It's about 8 feet tall.
Dude, randomly seeing dicks on the ground, we've seen them spray painted on the ground. We'll take pictures of them. There's actually historic precedents. And I remember this from my from one of my classes with Stephen G. Miller, which was the history of ancient Rome. One of the monuments, what they would do is they would actually chisel or have penises all over Rome, and they would aim towards brothels.
Yep.
So you would follow the little carved penises around, and then it would lead you to a brothel.
And this is going to make you jealous, to confirm that, when I took the seminar to Rome, I took a bus down to Pompeii.
Son of a bitch.
So Pompeii, the city that was ingrained in volcanic ash and preserved, at 91 AD, we got to tour around. And we found the brothels, we found those dicks, and then during the stage, the theater, we go in the back and they have all this different graffiti. It's all just giant dicks.
There was a dude
2,000 years.
There was a dude actually who got hit with the ash as he was jacking it. And they caught him.
We didn't see that on the tour.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was pretty interesting. It's we talk about the sexualization and that. I mean, it was very, very strong within that culture, especially with the Romans. So, I mean, but I just remember looking at all these monuments and being oh, there's another dick. God damn, these Romans were into dicks.
Dick.
How many dicks is that?
A lot.
Nice.
Well, leave it to Power Athlete Radio to turn training into dick talk.
Okay, so let's get into this.
Yes.
What is the motion of shoveling? Now, I remember when CrossFit was trying to increase their CrossFittiness, and they came out with a workout that had virtual shoveling, which I thought was hilarious because most people have shovels and you could go out and shovel dirt and not have to do it virtually in the gym.
For our late adopters, John, can you please explain the setup and the execution of a virtual shovel?
So you would take a barbell and you would grab one hand, one on the end, and you would do kind of a rotation shoveling method like this. And they were doing a virtual shoveling workout. Now, I think that workout only popped up once because the guys on the Iron Garm X, which was a forums that existed in some deal, but there was a whole dedicated thread to CrossFit and, more importantly, land-based and Glassman. And when the virtual shoveling came out, the Iron Garm went thermonuclear. And, the only people that read it more than us was actually CrossFit HQ, and they never posted that workout again. But a big part of, the original CrossFit football template had to do with this thing called field work. And where the story comes from is I played with a guy who was, Georgia farm boy, And he wasn't all that strong in the weight room, but when we went out to play, he was like a fucking tank. He had like inertia somehow. He was connected to the earth and a big punch. And I remember sliding up next to him. And if you guys have heard the podcast before, maybe you heard this story, but I slid up next to him at lunch and was like, what's the deal? Man, you're barely struggling to bench 225 in the gym, but yet you're out there just fucking crushing people. And he's like, well, I never really lifted weights. I grew up on this 1,000-acre hay farm in Georgia, and playing football felt a lot like baling hay. Bales of hay were 300 pounds. And he was just had, big, thick, strong hands. And I realized that there was a certain strength within your hands, and that's where I really got into that intrinsic strength, the idea of folding steel, but that idea of being strong within your grip and the ability to be able to rotate and throw and just be strong in different planes of motion. That's where that initial piece came in. So I remember, I grew up a, middle-class white kid in, Southern California. There was no farm work for me to do. So I had, within the training paradigm, when I went down and we were training with Roth, there had to be a lot of heavy, hard, awkward, rotational type movements. Mm-hmm. So things that, train the grip, we would do, heavy farmer's walks, single arm farmer's walks, lunges. That's where we got the teapots and the drunk steps. And all of that stuff was all about heavy, hard, awkward. And that piece of field work went into it. And, I believe that individual was the one that coined field strong, because he's like, we were never weight room strong. We were field strong. And when he was talking about field strong, he wasn't necessarily just talking about like football field strong, but actually training in the fields strong. So when people think about field strong, you're probably thinking about football field, and it wasn't. It was about working out here. And, now we live out here in Texas and, cutting down trees and doing all this field work, which I got a lot of it to do this week. I still got to cut down all these trees from the storms. So, that's a lot of that inherent strength is something that comes from that intrinsic strength.
And we were able to add this into the Power Athlete template that we taught at the Old School seminar and broke it down into different trainable components. First one and we almost put these in order that we would like to see it. First one was that awkwardness.
Yep.
Now, for our listeners, John, can you differentiate? We're preaching posture, position when it comes to squatting, deadlifting. Now we want to get into an awkward position with our posture and our spine. Why?
It's really easy to pull a bar off the ground with a nice flat back. But yet, if you ever watch anybody lift a stone or pick something up that's heavy, hard, and awkward, their back is rounded. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that like anytime you pull anything off the ground, your back has to be flat is kind of misnomer. Now, where people get injured is when they start with a flat back and then they end with a round back. If you start with a round back position, you're able to maintain that round back position, then you're usually okay. And this has come to play for me. Man, like so many times in my life have I been in situations where because I was strong, I was able to survive and do shit that other people weren't. Like the amount of times that I've seen somebody broken over on the side of the road, in our Power Athlete deal. If you see a broken down car, you get out and push, pulling over and then telling the people and them going to get out, no, you steer, and then pushing the car out of traffic. That takes a certain level of strength. The other one is, obviously messing. We're going to answer a question from my buddy, Stephen Watson, who's the owner of Off-Road Design, which is a place we get all of our parts for our square bodies. So he'll appreciate this. I went to go find a 79 Ford Dana 60 Snowfighter axle, which is pretty rare. And it was in a wrecking yard up in Yucaipa. So I drove up there when we were in Southern California. The guy goes out there and he shows up. The guy was diabetic on crutches, right? Has his wrecking yards trying to sell this shit off. It's like in the farthest corner buried under dirt. So I got to like uncover this thing. We cut a deal. And then I realize I have to get this Dana 60 with hubs, probably 400 yards to my truck. And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh shit. So I go back and I get a couple ratchet straps, ratchet around, and basically did a reverse sled drag with this thing, 400 yards, and then was able to hoist. And these things weigh 300, 400 pounds. Hoist one side up and then lifted it and slid it into my truck. And the look on this old man's face was like, I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, this is what I've been training for.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, the age old, and I know Harry hates it, but that age old question that I used to ask people and was funny, was our tagline for a number of years, but it's hard to have a question as a tagline. And so we kind of got away from it. But the age old, what are you training for? My stuff is being able to pick up tires and pick up shit that other people can't, be able to be physically strong enough to be able to go and do just about anything. That to me is freedom. I think when you're not strong enough to be able to just go and be like, oh yeah, no problem. Let's just lift it up. We'll get it out of the way. I mean, I was remembering we went and got the pitch arc belt squat. So me and TC drove down to this guy's place. He was cleaning out his gym, and the guy's like, oh, I'll go get some help. And what did I do? We just lifted it up and put it in the back of the truck. And the guy came out and he's like, okay then. And it's just like, it's freedom to have that level of strength and training. And unfortunately, you don't get that stuff with just training with barbells.
Nope. Leading to our next point, grip intensive.
Yeah.
Not just holding a barbell. Explain why the importance of finding something grip intensive. For example, towel pull-ups we did in Field Strong today.
Yep.
Where do people lose this? It's because they can't do it? They stop doing it in training?
Yeah. Years ago, I got a bunch of the Russian training manuals and I pulled a lot of our early kind of training stuff especially for kids from it. But they talked about that you can't develop grip strength after about the age of 19 or 20. And I don't know. I mean, that's what they thought. Now I've since met with a bunch of Bert Soren's old man, Pop Soren, who holds like the world record for closing the smallest Captain Crush. And he talked about his grip strength as he matured actually got better up into his 30s and 40s, maybe in his late 30s. But then, over time it declined, but he's still, if you go shake Pop's hand, he's in his 70s now, dude, he'll fucking shatter you. So I remember whenever we go to Sornex, one of my favorite things to do is pick up the anvils by the horns.
Mm-hmm.
And to be
right at the entrance. Yep.
Yeah. So they have all these anvils sitting on, and there's chalk. And that was how blacksmiths would test their strength, was how big an anvil they could pick up with one hand. So they have a 172 that I was able to pick up. And upon Pop seeing this, now, oh, okay.
You're worthy.
Yeah, you're worthy. Now let's go work on some stuff. But I think grip strength from, everything from, not only giving a good handshake, but this is really your connection to all of this stuff. Like if my grip was weak, I couldn't have picked up that Dana 60. If my grip was weak, I couldn't have done this stuff. And more carryover also into football, what people forget all too often. When they think about offensive linemen or defensive linemen, that idea of a big punch and being able to hand fight, what they forget is that you have to be able to put your hands on an individual in such a way that, you control them. So, the hams become that end of the chain, that extension has to be strong. Weak hands or poor grip is never an excuse. I mean, who was it? Captain Kirk Kowalski had really small hands. So he trained the shit out of his deadlift and ended up pulling, in the high eights. But if you watch him, his hands were like little sausages, and he had to work his grip strength so much because he didn't have the ability to really wrap a massive palm around the bar.
Yeah, one of my favorite anecdotes that we used to share during the field work section of the seminar, sharing some tales from some coaches that were strapped with equipment and naturally gravitated towards Field Strong, was a dude, I believe, high school football coach up in Detroit. There's two stories. I forget where they were from. One, a dude had engine blocks and he just welded handles on there for some farmers' carries.
Man, where was that guy out of?
And
so back in the day when we taught the CrossFit football seminar, I gave a programming talk, and then I would give a template, and then you had to go design workouts, and then that was your test, and then I would grade your workouts, and I'd get up and present them. One of the that night, when I got the grades back, I used to actually physically grade them and read through them. And I'm looking at, and then I would ask people to present. I'm going through, and this guy's got all this crazy shit on there, and I don't know what half of it is. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, this is going to be
perfect.
Good. Yeah, let's get this fucking guy up here. So I get him up to present, and he told me, he goes, I volunteered to be the football coach at this inner city school, and I can't remember where it was, that had never won a football game in 20 years. And he goes, by trade, I am a carpet installer. So he goes, I have these huge carpet rolls. So what we did is I went down and I had them stitch and make these huge bags for the carpet rolls. And so we wouldn't damage them. And we put them in these big, I don't know what they were, canvas bags, and we'd zip them. And then he went to the junkyard and bought Chevy 350 blocks, chains, anything he could find. And then welded handles on it, and basically created all of this equipment from that was free from a junkyard. Mm-hmm. So these kids had a program that involved Chevy 350 blocks, chains, and all these weird engine parts, probably axles. I think they did have Ford 9 inches that were obviously didn't have the carriers in them, and they would curl those. And then they would actually do squat steps and lunges with these heavy carpet rolls that were in these big bags. Like imagine like a huge like roll of carpet.
Yep.
And so he designed this entire program, and then he started training these kids, and then they ended up in like 3 years playing for like the state championship. So they went from never winning a game. All of a sudden he puts his training in, comes in, one-man band coaching. He's basically the head coach, offensive and defensive coordinator, and I think he had like one assistant, and this team ends up going on and being very, very successful. And as he's telling the story about like these kids, and like he went in and, inner city, in this, bad part of town, these kids like had nothing. And he creates this program for them, this strength training around all of this stuff that he gets for free. And now these kids are like focused, they're in on it, they're bought in. And then now they have a culture of winning. And as the guy's telling the story, I'm like shrinking in size and being like by the end of it, dude, I was practically teared up, and I went up and hugged the guy, and I was like, you figured it out. You hacked the code on what I'm trying to teach. Mm-hmm. Not letting what seems like, insurmountable obstacles deter you from your task, which is helping these people and giving them this program. And he crushed it. He got an A+, and I kind of felt like I should just sit down and let him teach the rest of the seminar. So that's happened to me on a few occasions, where I've gone in and been so humbled by the information that people are teaching that it just makes me feel tiny. So it's a good feeling to know that there are people out there. And then it also is a good lesson for me to never underestimate anybody. Mm-hmm. So now I kind of purposely overestimate and hope everybody's great, and then would rather be disappointed. And I think when you start underestimating people, it's because you don't want to be disappointed. So if I just underestimate everybody, I'm like, this guy will suck. Then when he does suck, I'm not disappointed. And but man, this guy really smashed it. And I can't remember his name, and I can't remember the school, but wherever you are, man, fucking we still talk about you.
Oh yeah, you are a legend. Last two components, we have full body, and then challenge.
Yeah, well, the full body is definitely in that rotation. So you have a few different motions, right? So you have to swing back. So now you're in that transverse kind of, obviously you're in a, kind of a staggered stance position. You have to throw your body, dig, and then pull. So now you're using different muscle contractions, eccentric, concentric, isometric. And then you're having to be explosive and then move this stuff and then go back. So it's going to be hard. Mm-hmm. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be full body. It's going to be grip intensive. And it's going to kick your ass.
Oh, yeah. And I used to really harp on that challenge, especially when working with high school athletes or female athletes, because imagine a giant tire within your gym or at the high school track. And there's kids that look at that and then believe for a moment that they can't lift it up. And you have the opportunity, the power as a coach to take them where they can't take themselves and get them to lift that up. And then they walk away with a sense of accomplishment that they couldn't do something. So a little bit different than the perfectly balanced barbell. It's an obstacle, an object where they see I can't. And similar to if you're looking at your football schedule and you see a ranked team on there. Oh, we can't. No. So it's this opportunity for them to accept the challenge and then do more than they could the day before.
Sure.
Through you. Mm-hmm. One of another anecdotes we used to tell with the field work, and this is one of my favorites. A coach would have three or four high school age students come to his gym, and then part of their warm up was taking the mats, dragging them outside, like beating them down, and then bringing them back into the gym. So awkward, grip intensive, full body, and talk about a mental challenge that, I mean, their parents were paying this coach to clean his gym.
Yeah. The other big one is the 4x6 rubber mats. So the 4x6 rubber mats, 3/4 stall mats, they weigh like 100 pounds a piece.
Something like that.
And I remember on numerous occasions having to like set those and move those and like picking those things up, folding them like tacos and throwing them. It was funny. My old neighbor, Joe Capuccio, when we were, when I had the gym in the downstairs of my loft, he came over as we were actually cleaning out the gym after, we got evicted from a place that I fucking owned, which always pissed me off at Newport Beach. And as we were picking up those rubber, I was like picking them up and throwing them in the back of the truck. And Joe goes to pick one up to help me and basically almost shits his back out. And he's like, Jesus, those things are heavy, and Joe's, actually was a pretty high level football player, got a chance to play in the NFL for a hot minute and was a big, strong dude, but hadn't trained very significantly with any real prominence in a number of years. And he was like, you made it look so easy. So I always think that that's a pretty good indicator. If you can make something that's heavy, hard, awkward, and really pretty shitty, if you can make it look easy, you're doing it right.
Oh, yeah. And how would you suggest for our listeners out there to throw in some field work, no matter the program they're on?
Any of the strongman stuff is always really good. I really like heavy farmers carries. We have, I actually bought the implements to train for the Denny Stones, which has still always been kind of one of the fun things I want to do. But I think like anything that involves stones, anything that involves any sandbags. So heavy sandbags I think are one of the best implements that you can have. We use them quite often in our training programs. That was really the basis of Third Monkey. So, anything that looks heavy, hard, and awkward, digging fence posts, moving that type of stuff, you got to cut trees down. So, you have to be creative. And if, you have any questions, there's this thing called the internet. You can reach out and, Chris Surgison's got a pretty good Instagram page. So let me give a shout out to Chris Surgison from Jack Street. He's been doing a bunch of strongman training and has some really fun stuff going on in his gym as well. So, yoke carries are another big one. The other one too, if you really want to challenge yourself, if you have a safety squat bar, loading that thing up and being able to walk with that and do, walking lunges, you can also Zercher it. So there's just, you're only limited by your imagination.
Yeah. Find different places to load and then maintain wherever that may be. Example would be our farmer's walk, right? That's a changing of the load, but we're walking, we're lunging with that. I could bring that up into a rack position, and then we can go single arm with those. The weight's pulling you in one direction. That is just awkward enough than staying in your comfort zone of the sagittal plane. So have fun with that. Recapping our field work, anything that's awkward, grip intensive, full body, and a challenge.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much, John. What's that hotline number again? If anyone else has any question?
If you are interested in leaving us a question and potentially having us answered on the air, you can reach out to the hotline at 929-464-464-0. 929-464-464-0. Also 929-ING-ING-0.
That's right. And this is another episode of the Premier.
We are the premier podcast in strength conditioning, Power Athlete Radio.
And if you love us, go ahead and leave us a review, 5 stars, and maybe a funny message. We still have that episode that we're teasing.
Here's our deal. If you go to any place that streams this podcast and you leave us a review of 5 stars and you leave us something creative, funny, quirky, intelligent that lets us know that you are a regular listener to Power Athlete Radio, we will read your review on the air and potentially just send you a shirt.
Oh,
so we'll send you some of our new gear. We'll send you a shirt. So leave us a review, smash us a 5-star, leave us something that is both creative, funny, witty, that lets us know that you are in the Power Athlete Mafia, and we'll send you a shirt.
All right. You heard it. Thank you. Bye.
Now it's time for you to empower your performance. Head to powerathletehqcomp37847.com/training to choose from a number of programs to meet your specific performance goals. And if you like to break a mental sweat too, visit academy.powerathletehq.com and become a real stakeholder in you or your athlete's success. Until next time, bye!